Our mission today is, well, it's dedicated to an uncomfortable truth. We are diving into the perennial aspects of human nature.
The really core, unchanging stuff.
Exactly, those dark impulses that drive leaders, investors, and, even ordinary people to make just catastrophic decisions. We're aiming for what our sources call lucid realism.
And that realism, it means we have to look at the human operating system without any sentimentality. We are blending the cold pragmatism of Niccolo Machiavelli, the brutal cynicism of the U.S. founding fathers.
And then bringing it right into the modern day.
Right. With case studies of absolute power and epic financial collapse from, say, Julius Caesar all the way up to the fall of FTX.
The sources, they deliver a really unsentimental breakdown. And here's the core finding. The same psychological wiring, ego, greed, and tribalism that drives the rise of tyrants. It's the exact same engine that fuels financial disasters.
It's the same internal corruption, Mark, just playing out in different arenas.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with the man who laid all the psychological groundwork.
We have to start with Machiavelli. I mean, he wasn't interested in how men should behave. That's philosophy. He was interested in how they do behave.
Which is politics.
Which is politics, and his profile of human nature is, it's just blunt. He defines men as ungrateful, fickle, simulators and deceivers, avoiders of danger, and greedy for gain.
It's a horrifying indictment, really. But if you accept that, if that's your starting point, then his key laws of power make perfect logical sense.
They do.
He famously argued it is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved.
Precisely. Machiavelli saw that love is it's a volatile asset, it's voluntary, it's conditional.
It can disappear overnight.
Exactly. He wrote, it's broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear is practical. Fear is maintained by a dread of punishment which never fails.
But wait, if the ruler is just feared, how does he stop himself from becoming a pure self-destructive tyrant? Where's the constraint? If not love, fear alone seems like it would just trigger a rebellion.
And that is the critical distinction he makes. A ruler has to inspire fear, which is a calculated tool, but he must absolutely avoid hatred. You can be ruthless, you can be efficient, but you can't be seen as unjust. The moment that people hate you, they lose their fear of the consequences. They feel like they have nothing left to lose anyway.
Which ties right into his most cynical, but maybe most powerful, insight about appearances. He saw that people are, easily fooled by appearance.
And they judge more by the eye than by the hand. So a smart ruler must always appear merciful, pious, honest, and just, even if underneath, they're cold and calculating.
It's not about vanity, then. It's survival.
It's pure survival.
Yeah.
Machiavelli taught that power is sustained not by genuine virtue, but by the convincing performance of virtue.
It is so unsettling to realize that the entire American system is built on the same level of cynicism. The Founding Fathers, they were reading from the same playbook.
Oh, absolutely. They were not starry-eyed idealists. They were brutal realists about the limits of human virtue.
Their whole design philosophy wasn't based on hoping for good leaders. It was about assuming the absolute worst-case scenario.
That's right. Their assumption was that human beings are, at their core, self-interested, emotional, and power-hungry, which, led to James Madison's famous line.
If men were angels, no government would be necessary.
And since we are very much not angels...
The entire system they engineered was designed to make ambition counteract ambition. They didn't trust morality to restrain power. They trusted structure.
They trusted structure. And they knew from studying history, especially the collapse of the Roman Republic, that systems erode slowly. They saw how temporary emergency powers, like the office of dictator in Rome, how those got normalized and paved the way for demagogues. They saw how military loyalty shifted from the state to an individual general, which is what allowed guys like Sulla and Caesar to just dismantle the republic brick by brick.
So when they sat down to write the Constitution, they weren't building a government on trust. They were building it on, structural suspicion.
Exactly. The checks and balances, the independent judiciary, the staggered elections, every single element was a safety valve.
It was designed to be inefficient.
Yes, intentionally inefficient. If the president acts, Congress has to react. If Congress overreaches, the courts can step in. Staggered elections mean you can't change the whole system at once. They built a pressure cooker with 10 safety valves because they assumed it would constantly be under stress from leaders trying to grab more power.
The system was designed to be annoying because that annoyance is a safeguard against catastrophe.
It's a perfect way to put it.
And that fear of the leader who starts out noble but ends up corrupted, that brings us right to this corruption arc that we see repeating over and over again. Napoleon, Erdoğan and Putin. How does that psychological rot even begin?
It's a predictable pattern, and it's really rooted in a lack of friction. It starts with stage one, the competent savior. The leader genuinely solves a crisis. They deliver real
It's
results.
like Erdogan's early years.
Yes, bringing economic stability to Turkey in the 2000s, or Napoleon bringing efficiency in the Napoleonic Code after the chaos of the revolution. People, quite understandably, rally behind that competence.
But success is a dangerous drug, and that's where stage two kicks in, the personalization of power.
Exactly. The leader's internal story just completely shifts. It's no longer, I serve the nation.
It becomes, I am the nation. The message becomes, only I can fix this. And that justifies getting rid of any checks and balances.
And this is where the psychological change becomes terrifyingly measurable. As accountability erodes, when a leader stops hearing the word no, power literally changes the brain. Studies show it reduces neural activity associated with empathy.
That's a profound point. It doesn't just make you act less empathetic, it might physically reduce your capacity for it.
It does, and that lack of friction, both internal and external, it drives stage three, the empathy deficit and intolerance. Critics are no longer seen as loyal opposition.
They become traitors, vandals, enemies of the nation.
Right. We saw that with Erdogan's really aggressive, disproportionate response to the Gezi Park protests in 2013. A small domestic challenge was suddenly treated like an existential threat.
Which sets the stage for the most dangerous phase. Stage 4, crisis as opportunity.
Yes. When a genuine threat happens, like the Turkish coup attempt in 2016, it becomes the perfect justification. Declare emergency powers, conduct huge purges, eliminate all opposition, and rewrite the Constitution.
Because by then, the leader's greatest fear isn't failing the country, it's losing control.
That fear of loss becomes more radicalizing than the initial desire to gain power ever was, and that leads to the final stage, stage 5. Reality distortion and cruelty. The leader becomes pathologically isolated. Think of Putin's extreme isolation during the pandemic, surrounded only by sycophants feeding him the exact narrative he wants to hear.
And that isolation, that total lack of honest feedback, it just fuels these incredibly high-risk gambles.
No.
Like the invasion of Ukraine. It's not justified by sober planning, but by some kind of messianic historic mission.
And we know the three things that accelerate this decline the fastest. First, status obsession, vanity. The addiction to deference, the need for constant validation. It often comes out in these massive, extravagant displays of power.
Like Erdogan's 1,000-room palace.
Exactly. Second is tribalism, weaponizing us versus them. Opposing the leader becomes a betrayal of the people, of the faith, of the cause. It's primal, and it's incredibly effective at silencing dissent.
And the last one.
The terror of loss, as we said. Once they're at the top, the fear of falling is the most destructive force there is. It justifies anything.
We've charted how the thirst for political power corrupts. But what happens when you substitute that ego and status for, money? If political isolation is the drug for the dictator, does financial hubris create a similar kind of echo chamber?
Oh, absolutely. The exact same toxic impulses, ego, tribalism, greed, they operate just as destructively in a hedge fund or a tech startup. We see intellectual overconfidence leading to disaster again and again.
The classic example has to be long-term capital management, LTCM.
The classic. LTCM was run by financial geniuses, Nobel laureates even. And they built these complex models. They assumed they understood risk better than the market itself, so they used massive leverage.
Their arrogance was believing the market had to conform to their model.
That's it. They didn't realize that when an extreme event happens, like Russia defaulting on its debt, the model just breaks completely. They thought because they were exceptional, they were the exception to the rule of risk.
Which is the exact hubris the founders warned about in government.
Yeah.
And you couple that arrogance with the pure rush of greed and what you called narrative addiction.
Yes. That dopamine hit from success, it just drives more and more escalation until rational thought is completely gone.
You think about the dot-com bubble, chasing hype over valuation, or more recently, the FTX collapse.
Oh, FTX is a perfect case study. The whole thing was driven by this intoxicating story about the founder, the young genius revolutionizing finance. People were so busy hero-worshipping and chasing these crazy yields that they ignored the most basic, boring questions.
Like, where's the balance sheet?
Right. What's the governance? They bought the story over the facts.
And we even see that tribalism at play in finance. The meme stock phenomenon with GameStop or AMC, where investing literally became part of your identity.
It did. Selling was seen as betrayal, a paper hands move. It completely overrode rational decision-making in favor of just sticking with the in-group. It's the political us versus them just applied to a ticker symbol.
So the impulse to belong to the tribe is often stronger than the impulse to actually make a profit.
Often, yes. So since human nature doesn't change, the only defense we have is a structure of self-control.
Personal guardrails.
Ah,
We need to build systems for ourselves, whether we're trading stocks or just making big life decisions.
you do. And the advice is simple, but the execution is hard. You set written rules when you are calm and rational. Then you rely on that process when you're under stress, whether that stress is euphoria or panic.
Prioritize the process your sober self created over the feeling your emotional self is having.
That's it.
So that's the individual defense. But let's zoom back out to the state. If those systems of checks and balances fail, what is the ultimate guardrail against tyranny? And this brings us to a really harsh truth and a provocative quote from Thomas Jefferson in 1787.
Hmm.
The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It's its natural manure.
That is the ultimate statement of lucid realism, isn't it? And Jefferson was not being metaphorical. He saw complacency as the enemy of liberty, and he believed that periodic upheaval was healthy system maintenance. It was a necessary warning to rulers that the people still had a spirit of resistance.
He believed that without that credible threat of forceful resistance, power would just keep expanding indefinitely. His own case study was the American Revolution itself.
Right, the escalating resistance to British power, the Stamp Act, the Tea Party, it forced a violent reset that proved that power must yield when it's constrained by force.
But the paradox of struggle, as you call it, is that not all struggle succeeds.
No, it doesn't. While it's necessary to prevent decay, the outcome depends entirely on the institutional foundation that's already there.
So successful struggle might look like the U.S. Civil Rights Movement. It was nonviolent, but it was built on a deep institutional foundation, the Constitution, and the very real threat of widespread unrest that forced legal reform.
Exactly. It leveraged existing structures. Now, you contrast that with some of the tragic failures from the Arab Spring, like in Syria or Egypt. In those cases, the sudden, violent removal of a strong man didn't lead to liberty.
It led to chaos, or even worse, tyranny.
Precisely because that institutional foundation, a shared vision for government, a stable state, it was completely lacking. You can clear the ground, but if you don't have institutions ready to receive the seeds of liberty, tyranny just grows back.
So the final harsh lesson is that liberty only arrives after a long, ugly fight, and only if the structures are there to receive it. The constant is that power will always expand until it hits hard, organized resistance.
So what does this whole deep dive into the darkest parts of human nature give us? I think it gives you 3 actionable pieces of wisdom.
Okay, first, don't trust virtue. Never rely on the good guy narrative long term. Assume every leader, political or corporate, is vulnerable to that corruption arc. Hope for the best, but build your systems to stand the worst.
Second, respect structures. Respect institutions and guardrails, checks and balances, and independent media, separation of powers. Respect those things more than you respect personalities. Those structures are the only thing that can contain the destructive impulse built into power.
And third, and this is the one that applies directly to you, the listener, check yourself. Assume that you are not the exception to human nature. You will rationalize, you will be tribal, you will avoid admitting you're wrong if you're left unchecked. Build your own personal constraints before you need them.
And here's the final provocative thought. The ultimate Machiavellian insight that applies to every interaction, political, financial, or personal. The man who is visibly prepared for conflict rarely has to fight at all.
Because predators always choose the weaker target. The enduring lesson of this deep dive isn't to become cynical, it's to embrace that lucid realism. You have to build your life, your decisions, and your systems with the knowledge that the dark core of human nature is permanent and that preparation, not optimism, is the only thing that actually keeps you safe.